Okay, so we are live. Hello and welcome to everyone who's joining in on this week of Disruptive Technologies, a Malawian perspective. So before we move on, I'm just going to ask everyone who's in the audience to like, subscribe, comment, and engage with the guests and today's topic. So over the past few weeks, I've had different sessions. I've had a session on digital manufacturing. I've had a session on blockchain and AI. Then I had another one on AI for business transformation. And then last week, I had a session on digital public infrastructures. So, from all of this, the one thing that we can see is there's a lot of digital developments that are happening in the country. And the most significant thing that I can point out is the effort that the government is putting in for Malawi for us to go towards our digital future. So, as we talk about all these disruptive technologies, how they're changing industries and everything that is happening, the one thing that we cannot ignore is cybersecurity. Because as long as we're online, there's also going to be risks in us using these technologies and everything that is going on online. Even in public service delivery, we have seen some issues when it comes to cybersecurity. There's a lot that is going on in that. So today, I have a special guest, Florence. She's going to do the rest of her introduction herself. She's the one who's going to take us through cybersecurity challenges and solutions and how Malawi can best go about our digital development while ensuring our safety online. So, without much, I'm just going to give it over to you, Florence, to introduce yourself, give us a bit of your professional background, yeah, where you're coming from, what you're up to now, and where you're going. So, over to you, Florence.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Phyllis, for having me. So as introduced, my name is Florence Nkosi. Currently, I am a lecturer digital forensics at Birmingham City University. And how I got here is really a long story, but I'll try to just uh, say a shorter version of it, like key things that have happened. So I started my career in 2013 as an IT auditor with the government of Malawi, Central Internal Audit Unit. And I worked with the government of Malawi for some years until 2020, when I went into academia. So I moved from auditing into um, teaching. So in between my career with the government of Malawi, I got a scholarship with Commonwealth and I studied a master's in forensic information technology at University of Portsmouth. My motivation for that was mainly around securing systems. If you can recall, in 2013 there was the Cashgate, and we ended up finding out that the integrated financial management system had weaknesses. And when the auditors Baker Tilly came on the ground, they were able to analyze the system and find out these deleted transactions that were in the systems but were deleted. That sort of got me thinking to say, okay, so I can gain a skill to actually investigate computers. That's how I went to study for my master's in forensic information technology, and worked with Mzuni for a while before I moved to um, Birmingham, and now working with Birmingham City University. So the shorter version of my long career story is that.
Okay, great. Actually, one interesting thing is the graphic designer who works on our everything is actually a student of yours. So when she was designing the poster, she was like, "Oh, you have my lecturer now." So she's excited to see this. So yeah, that's something that's very interesting. Okay,
Okay.
so I think now we can proceed into today's topic, which is cybersecurity challenges and solutions. Yeah, so
Okay.
over to you, Florence.
All right. Thank you, Phyllis. So I did prepare a brief presentation to talk about a few things before we get into our discussion. I'll I will now start the presentation. So to begin with, I think we need to look at cybersecurity, because you hear the word often, cybersecurity, cybersecurity. But what is cybersecurity? What are we trying to achieve at the end of the day? So when we hear the word cybersecurity, basically we're looking at protecting computers, networks, data that is stored in the computers and systems from cyber attack, thefts, or damage. So in cybersecurity, I would liken it as having a house. So all these digital systems are a house, and I put up a cute house there. And there are attackers or threats that would want to get access to your data for various reasons, sometimes just for fun, sometimes they want to get your data so they can um, maybe steal money from you if it's bank transactions, for example. So to secure that data or information that you have, including the networks that we have, we need to put in place measures. So it's the same as when you have a house and you want to stop robbers from coming in, you put burglar bars, you put alarms around it to secure it. So it's the same concept in cybersecurity here. We're looking at important information that we have and systems, infrastructure, and data. And we're saying that if anyone who is not authorized to have access to our data should not have access to it, or someone should not gain access to our system and then process transactions that are not authorized. So you're looking at securing your infrastructure, so the network, the data, and the systems that we have. Now, when we're looking at cybersecurity in general, there are threats, cyber threats. So these can sort of compromise the integrity of our system and our data that we're trying to safeguard. And the interesting thing about cybersecurity is it's relatable to digital transformation. And I've seen that you've had a number of guests around digital transformation that the country is going through. So it's a very good thing to look at uh, moving from manual to digital systems. But we also realize that just that uh, move to a digital system will introduce some threats, a number of threats. And in a way, it increases the attack surface, giving opportunity to hackers and attackers to target your system and then get information. Now, something that happens is that whenever people are moving from a manual system to an automated system, we would look at system development and the functionality, everything is working, and we'll forget this element of cybersecurity. We'll forget that this system need to be secured from external threats. So to do that, we will need to implement specific controls and specific security features to ensure that no outsider can gain access to our system that we're developing. So cybersecurity should not be an afterthought. In fact, it should be part of that development as you're developing a system or implementing a specific technology. It's important to also look at, okay, so what are the threats that are there? If I was an attacker, how would I gain access to this system? What would I use? And that would sort of help to put in place measures to mitigate that risk from actually happening. So you'd find that most people in Malawi would think, what do I have? What do I keep on my computer that someone can, try and attack and hack me? And that's really a misconception that we need to address. So you see, most cyber criminals, or if we're looking at attackers, will find something variable in there. It might be your credit card details, it might be someone's else, maybe personal details that you've stored on your machine. That to them is still variable information that they can get. So we need to look at anyone can be a target of cybercrime as long as you're using the internet and accessing various websites. You're interacting with the internet, you're prone to be a victim of cybercrime. And it is also, we also need to look at um, cyber criminals. When we think, okay, we are a developing country, what gold do we have, or what data do we have that someone can target us? uh, that's something that we also need to correct, because one of the things that you find is that uh, cyber criminals will use countries like Malawi, to test their skills. So if our systems are vulnerable, it's easy for them to crack and get in and gain access to the information, or even worse, deny us access to our own system. So it's not that we're not prone to cyber attacks. We are very prone to cyber attacks. And in as much as we're thinking of digitalization and moving away from manual to digital, these are things that we need to address in earlier on, so that if we move a system and it's digitalized, no one can easily access it. It's secure enough. It cannot be exploited by attackers. So just to go through a number of cyber threats that are rampant now, um, malware and ransomware. I think the viruses people have faced, that have had, like, computers, excuse me, have had their computers attacked by malware and ransomware. So the only difference between malware is that malware can target your computer, maybe shut you out, or maybe corrupt your files. But when you're looking at ransomware, it's where actually someone takes control of your machine or your file and encrypts it, and they demand for you to give specific amount of money so that they can give you back your data. So this is quite common. I know a few other people, even in Malawi, have faced a ransomware. So it's not that because we are a developing country we cannot face these cyber threats. Uh, they're even on the rise in developing countries. And then phishing is another cyber threat that I would like to talk about. When we're looking at phishing, is when you get an email that looks innocent, but it's soliciting important information from you. Mostly this would be login details. So the trick is, they would say that maybe you need to change your password for, say, your bank, because maybe something happened and you need to change it. And if you click on the link and you're adding in your details, they're not actually going to your bank's website. They're going to this attacker's website, and then they can see your details, and then they can use these details to log into your banking app or bank account. And another thing is data breaches. So data breaches are quite common, where attackers who target a financial institution, for example, a bank or maybe an insurance company, to get details, personal details and information about their customers, so that they can sell them on the market, or they can use them for their own sinister things. And then another thing is social engineering. So social engineering is where it still appeals to the human element of us, because we are kind to people and we're vulnerable, mostly vulnerable. So social engineering is where you also get solicited for specific information uh, through maybe messages or emails. And I like to reflect on the common one in Malawi, is where people send you a message, an SMS about maybe your relative has sent us something, and you need to give us some money so that we can bring this item to you. That's, you would think that as one of the attacks that's common in Malawi. Maybe we could call it SMSing or something like that. It would go in that category because it's an SMS. But you see that people are still using the same technology to steal from people. So they would call you pretending they are from maybe Airtel Money and asking for your details, and you just give them. People are not aware that they should not be giving out this important information. So those are some of the threats that we are facing. And data breaches is quite common for systems, especially big companies, organization, the public sector. They would the criminals would want to get data from that. I should have also included denial of service attack. This is where the criminals will take over your system and you will not have access to it. So those are some of the threats that we're facing now. In developing countries, as I mentioned earlier, it's not that we are safe from the attacks. We are actually more targeted because of the various weaknesses that we have, which we're going to look at in a number of in the next few minutes. But as we're looking at digitalization and we're looking at implementing smart technologies, artificial intelligence, IoT, we need to look at that as increasing the attack surface for cyber criminals. So any new system that is developed or implemented gives opportunity to a cyber criminal to gain access to it, try their skills, try to see if they can get data from there, if they can shut you out. So we still we need to be careful in how we implement the technologies that are there, ensuring that we're thinking about safety and security first and foremost, and development should go hand in hand with cybersecurity. And in thinking about that, I looked at um, the disruption that happened a few months ago at immigration system, and this is something that most of us could relate to because we heard of it in the news, on social media. People who had urgent cases were unable to access passports so they can travel out. So that I would like to think of that as a denial of service attack. Uh, I'm not I do not have uh, full details of what happened, but uh, the act of you not having access to something that is yours is usually denial of service attack. They're not sure whether unauthorized access happened and someone got data out of the system. That's all uh, something out of the scope of what we're discussing. But we're looking at that, just that act of the system being disrupted. It could compromise sensitive data, personal data, and the system keeps date of birth of people, um, the national ID details, and so on and so forth. All this could fall into the wrong hands. In a way, it also impacts national security. Who knows, they might duplicate more passports and pretend to be me in another country. It's all a lot. But what we need to look at is how can we safeguard and secure our systems so that they are cyber secure and resilient enough to attacks. So in resilience is that it's the system and the people working with the system are able to um, react and to respond to a threat in time before it gets worse, like not having access to the system. So before we go into our discussion, this is something that I just want to highlight. In as much as we are a developing country, we're not far off from what we need to be doing. In fact, I would say that we're making positive steps in terms of securing our nation and securing the systems and the public infrastructure that we have. So the current state of cybersecurity in Malawi. This is a few information that I was able to find on where we are. So we have the legal frameworks that are addressing cyber threats and crime. So there is the Electronic Transaction and Cybersecurity Act, which was established in 2016. And I also understand that there is a cybercrime bill, which is in draft form and has been since November 2023. But these are bills and acts that are going to help address cyber crimes. How do we respond to them? uh, how do we uh, prosecute those people that have committed these crimes? And also maybe where do we report cyber crimes when they happen? These are acts and frameworks that will cover all that. And I also know or understand that there is the ICT policy. So the ICT policy has a very interesting phrase that I came across, that Malawi wants to improve the national security, but it also understands that cybercrime or cyber threats could pose uh, could pose challenges to national security. As such, there is a clause to say in ICT policy that we want to ensure that security agencies stay updated on the latest development in ICT sector, including cyber crimes. So you see that cyber crimes is being mentioned often. And another thing is there's been the establishment of the Malawi Computer Emergency Response Team, which is a very positive thing. That that team is going to help in coordinating and responding to cybersecurity threats that happen in the country. That's a very positive step towards securing our public infrastructure as well. I should pause at this minute to ask you, Phyllis, if you want to chip in and discuss something else at this point.
Yeah, so far so good. I have a comment from Patrick Ngala. I think this is when you were talking about the immigration. He said, and the most recent one is at the Directorate of Road Traffic and Safety Services. I think he's talking about another cyber attack in the chat. So Patrick, you can confirm. For me, I think the one thing that you mentioned is how when we were talking about the topics that I've been talking about last week. Last week, we had a topic on digital public goods and digital public infrastructures, where now it gets me thinking, like, if we are to if we are to utilize these DPGs, what are the cyber security concerns that we have to think of when we are implementing these technologies? So yeah, and I love how it's going so far. It also tells me of how most of the times we always say criminals are the first ones to adopt new technologies. So as Malawi is going through these new implementations, getting introduced to new technologies, we have to know that the bad guys are always on the forefront, trying to see how it works, learning before even a regular user, just to see how everything works. So yeah, I think let's proceed, and I hope everyone else in the audience is also engaged and just eager to know more when it comes to cybersecurity in Malawi.
It's interesting that the recent one is the directory of of road traffic. When I was preparing and thinking about that, I was thinking about key public infrastructures, which if they were attacked would cause a lot of disruption in the country. And I was thinking of these systems, the immigration, the Malawi road traffic system, the integrated financial management system, because that's where a lot of government payments go through. So these, to us, these are the critical infrastructures that we have, IT infrastructures. Not forgetting the ID system. I don't know what it's called, but where we the one that processes national IDs, that's also an important infrastructure. So when we're looking at these systems, we need to look at them holistically to say how can they be attacked, first and foremost, and then look at how we can secure them. All right. So my slides are going to help us with the discussion, so I'll continue, and then feel free to chip in whenever you need to comment or something like that. So I think the other question we were discussing, Phyllis, is that are we safe? Is our infrastructure really safe from vulnerable from cyber threats? I think we're not. We are on track, but we're not. So if we look at the public sector, it has a lot of vulnerabilities. To begin with, there is limited resources and then expertise. look at how many of our IT people are trained to actually respond to a cyber threat when it happens. How many of our people are trained to secure these systems, configuring firewalls, testing if everything is working fine. You'll find that there are very few people with these skills and capabilities, and that's one of our biggest vulnerability. We need capable people that can secure our systems, that can are ready to respond if anything goes wrong with this system. And then another thing is budgets. So you see that cybersecurity would not be prioritized in any of the national budgets, not at all. We're looking at health, that's our priority: health, education, agriculture. But for all these things, for digitalization to sort of work in all these sectors, we need to secure these systems. We need to secure these technologies that we are implementing, and that's one of the things that I looked into. And then our critical infrastructure is at risk. So look at the grid system that ESCOM use. It's automated. That's one. And then we're looking at critical systems like immigration, and the MARTIS comes up as well. If an attack was to happen on any of these systems, and we've experienced it before, now we should say 2 times, considering it seems there is also an attack on MARTIS, it would disrupt public service. So people cannot access their driving license, or people cannot access their passports. It also sort of causes panic. Now it's not just an IT issue, it will cause panic among people. Why are we being targeted? What's happening? And because most people are not very aware on how systems should work or what is happening, it causes sort of some panic to people to say something is wrong. And another thing in relation to that is low cybersecurity awareness. So you see that a lot of public and private sector employees are not aware of the cyber threats that are there. So we're not talking about telling people about phishing and malware. People don't know, so they get an email saying this email is from national bank, and we want your details. They will easily give it because they don't know the red flags to look for in the email to say this is a phishing email or this is not. If they get an email, they click on links that they don't know, because they are not sure. If they say click on this link to win a trip to such a place, people will end up clicking because they don't know. And those are like vulnerabilities and risks that might end up introducing, for example, a malware on your machine, or a ransomware, even worse. Okay, so
Yeah,
there
and
isn't proper
um,
awareness in terms of this.
oh yeah, I just wanted to say, I think one of the things that we see so far is these cyber criminals knowing exactly what makes us tick. Basically, they will use Airtel money because they know Airtel money is largely used. They will use social cash transfer programs because they know that there are these social cash transfer programs that are going on in the areas, and this is something they'll be like, oh, I don't know, UNICEF is giving you 2,000 for you and your family. Oh, ShopRite is saying this. So they know more about us than we know about them. So that's, yeah, something else that I could say.
My theory is there is nothing free. So you see that even when during COVID, there were some programs that were targeting people. And what did the criminals do? They used the same. So COVID relief something, and we're going to help you with this and that. They know what will make people tick, as you say, and then people are more vulnerable to that. They'll say, okay, I need some money. Let me click on the link. Let me win a voucher. And in that way, they are introducing a malware or even ransomware on their machine. So there is a need for a lot of cyber security awareness, cyber hygiene, as we say. People need to know how to spot these things. If we know how to spot them, we'll not fall victim of them. That's very true. Yep. So let's move on to, I think one of the other thing you are very interested in us to discuss is cybersecurity concerns as we're going through digital transformation. So I listed a few. I think I have tackled some in the other slide as well. But these are the main things that we need to be thinking about as we're thinking of digital transformation or uh, implementing new technologies. Okay, so skills and training. First, very important. If we're implementing new systems, we need people that are trained, experts that are trained to implement security measures. But also, if things go wrong, they know how to respond to those threats, so that they do not disrupt the systems and the services that we're using. And this is a very, I think, important point as well. We are a developing country and we do not have a lot of funding or sufficient funding. But most of these cybersecurity tools and softwares will need us to pay money, an arm and a leg, for us to implement them. So that sort of limits our ability and capability to, implement more diverse or a lot of tools that are secure. So apart from just training, okay, apart from implementing these softwares and security measures, we also need people to be trained on them. They need to know how to use the tool, how to implement it, how to troubleshoot it if something goes wrong. So we need, all this needs resources, and this is something that we're lacking. It's worth exploring maybe later on in the discussion, see how best we could address this lack of resources. And then another thing is weak and legal regulatory framework. As I mentioned earlier on, it's not that we don't have rules and regulations that are talking about cybercrime, but maybe they're not enough or not addressing the problems enough. Another thing you might find is that they're not enforced, they're not being enforced. One of the things that I've been trying to find out is that if someone is a victim of cybercrime, where do they go to report apart from the police? And if we were to follow the trail, what happens when the police gets this case? The response is not standardized. So I think maybe it will be based on case by case. There is no standardized um process or procedure to follow when someone has reported that they've been a victim of cybercrime. So those are some of the things that we need to address. Our legal and regulatory framework needs to look into this. I know that the um, cyber crime bill, or one of the bills, is looking at, has penalties that people pay if you're caught doing cybercrime or you're charged with some cybercrime. But maybe we need to look into it a bit more. Are we holistically as well? All the cyber crimes, are they included in them? What happens if someone reports? How are we investigating? What's the end point after an investigation has happened? So that needs to be addressed in our frameworks as well. And also looking at limited cybersecurity awareness. So this is both in the public private sector as well as in general. You'd find that we don't know how to protect ourselves. We don't know how to spot the red flags that might show us that that's a cybercrime or that's a cyber threat about to happen. And then I like to think that there isn't really collaboration between government, between public sectors and organizations when it comes to handling cyber issues. So if a cyber crime happens, for example, in a financial institution, how are we handling this? There are no clear guidelines on how we're doing it. So something that we need to look at. So government agencies as well as organization in the public sector need to look at how do we handle cyber threats when they happen. If it's more coordinated, I think it would be easy for we have a standardized process. So the public sector knows that if, for example, a phishing incident has happened, or we have been attacked by a ransomware or malware, these are the processes that we do. This is where we report, and how we share this information amidst us. So one organization might find out a better way of tackling ransomware, for example, but it would just be to their organization. They will not share with other people. While if this was shared across the board, it would help a lot more people. Another thing is we are adopting a lot of technologies, and new technologies just mean that more risks, more vulnerabilities as well. So as I mentioned earlier on, when organizations are saying that we are going to adopt, for example, IoT, so we are implementing IoT sensors, for example, to help us water our farm when when it's dry. What are the security measures there? Because someone can easily target these sensors and disable them. So you're happy at home and comfortable thinking that, okay, at 10 a.m., maybe the sensors will go off and then the irrigation will happen. But then someone has disabled them and nothing happens at that time. If you don't check for a while, you'd find that maybe your crops have dried up. So as we're implementing new technologies, let's also focus on security. So developing and implementation of new technologies should work hand in hand with security. We should be looking at the security aspect as well. And then another concern is data information. So personal information that's stored in the system. How is it being secured? I'm happy that we have a data privacy, is it act similar has been implemented, which is very good, but now we need to enforce this more. If we're implementing a new system, right at the start we need to be looking at how is the data that the system is keeping being safeguarded, because if someone accesses that information, there might be breach of privacy. Okay, so we need to be looking at this right at the beginning, as we're implementing new systems, as we're incorporating new technologies in our day-to-day life. um Another thing you we talked about looking at is cyber hygiene. So this is for individuals first and foremost. How do we go about protecting ourselves online? The first thing is using strong password, and it is advised not to repeat the same password over and over again in all your user accounts, because one single point of failure means someone knows your password to all your systems and all your personal accounts. And this is important. So passwords are good, yes, but attackers can easily crack them. And with the growth of AI, it's easy to think of someone's password and then crack them. But what we need more is the two-factor authentication. So two-factor authentication usually involves your username or password and something that you have. So this can be your phone. You can get a message to confirm that it is actually you trying to log into a particular account, or it can be maybe a card that you swipe to make sure that it is you, or you receive a digit to say, can you confirm that you're trying to log in? So this is where this is a very good mechanism. Someone can know your password, but they cannot have your phone at the same time. So if they attempt to log in and you have activated a two-factor authentication, it's going to say, okay, we've sent a code to your phone. Can you please confirm? And they don't have that code, then they cannot access your system. They cannot access your account. Two-factor authentication is very important. I think even in Facebook has one now. I think because there was a lot of accounts being hacked into, because the password, anyone can guess it. Another thing is regular software updates. So like Windows will have updates from time to time. These updates are made to sort of close specific vulnerabilities that they have identified. So these are weaknesses in their system that attackers can easily use. If you don't update your software regularly, these vulnerabilities are still there, they're open. But if you're updating your software, you know that if for example one vulnerability or two vulnerabilities have been closed, then you also secured in that way. Now, this is something that everyone should know. But if you get an email from someone you don't know or anyone suspicious and there is a link or an attachment, you should not click on it. You should not click on it. That's it. Because most of the times cyber criminals will use emails, links and attachments to entice you to click on it. And usually maybe the malware that they want to deliver to you is embedded in that link or in that particular attachment. So once you click on it, once you open it, then you give them access, you give them a backdoor to your device. And then regular backup, so backing up your information from time to time to ensure that if, for example, your laptop or phone is attacked by a malware or a ransomware, you have a backup somewhere that you can use. Now, looking at businesses, and I sort of tried to look at small businesses, especially because I think most often big businesses might have good profit, so they might implement these security measures easily. They can afford to buy expensive software. But small businesses, there are gaps in there are a lot of gaps because most small businesses are not very prepared. So you'd find that businesses do not have a cybersecurity plan, they do not have an incident response plan, nothing to look at securing their systems and themselves, and they are prone to more attacks. So we need to look at, I keep thinking of a simple framework that small businesses can easily adopt, key things that they need to make sure are in place to say that their security is at a certain level, at least, that they can easily implement. But currently I think most are not prepared cybersecurity wise. And another thing is cybersecurity awareness as well. When someone, s- when you employ someone in your business, it's very rare that you tell them about all this cyber hygiene, like do not click on links, do not do this and that. You just get them on and think that they know. So there's still a lot to for business owners to do, making sure that those people that they are bringing on have at least some understanding of the risks that are there. And this could be across the board. It could be both for small businesses as well as public sector or private sector. Incident response plans. So an incident response plan is basically saying that if, for example, we are attacked by a ransomware, these are the steps that we're going to take to recover from it. So it involves an instant response team, just like the computer response team that Macra has. But this time around, it's within your organization. So specific IT people or specific security people know that if an attack happens, we're going to do A, B, C, D, and E to recover from it, to respond, recover from it. And then we're going to implement this. For example, maybe we're going to now start our backup server or something in order for business to continue. So there should be instant response plan to small businesses, public sector, private sector, looking at all these attacks and threats that might happen, building capability to respond to those particular attacks, and a step-by-step plan on how you can respond to that. And as I mentioned earlier on, government and private sector need to collaborate quite a lot, because maybe a, a private organization can figure out how to stop a specific attack, but they don't share this information, and the government say, or the public sector is struggling with similar attacks. They need to be sort of collaboration, a way of sharing information across the board. You're not publicizing that we've been attacked by this malware or this ransomware, but you're saying that these threats that are there, and this is how we can respond and address such attacks. I think I have mentioned some of this as I was going on in the discussion, but just a quick overview. How do we address the cybersecurity challenges in digitalization? Building local skills. This is something that we really need to focus on. So we need experts that we are training, looking also at our landscape. So we are developing country. We might need different set of skills than those that are in developing countries. How do we implement these skills in our developing country? Excuse me. So I think we need to be building cybersecurity talent, and it would be good to have degree programs, professional programs that are looking at cybersecurity and implementing it in a Malawi way, in a Malawi landscape. Then we're still looking at training and awareness. Whenever I do a cybersecurity awareness training, I tell people that a human being is the weakest point in cybersecurity. And if this person is not trained, then everything else goes to the door. You can implement good security measures, but if you do not train your people, everything goes off. So a human being need to be trained. So it's both in government, public sector, even in our local communities. Think of the many parents or relations that have been victims of attacks, of smishing. They've paid money to someone to say they'll send me. It's just because they don't know. If they knew, they would say, oh, this looks like, there's SMSing, and then they will not respond. They'll just ignore it. So awareness is key. And we go back to collaboration and working together. So we need to share knowledge and know common goals. It would be good to have maybe local Malawian standards or framework to say, okay, if you are a company or organization, in terms of cybersecurity, you should have A, B, C, D in order to secure yourself from the current threats. And this need to be updated from time to time. And this is important, and I've highlighted it as well. So whenever we're looking at development, we should not forget cybersecurity. So like development and cybersecurity should go hand in hand. We're thinking of developing, but we're also thinking about how do we secure this digitalization that we're pursuing. So this, I call it local skills. We need to develop local talent first and foremost. We might also want to explore implementing local softwares, local security solutions developed by Malawians and then used by Malawians, because we cannot just be consumers of these softwares. If we are to buy it, it's expensive. Can we think of a way of implementing or developing our own tailored solutions to the Malawi way? It would involve maybe facilitating local capacity. We have capacity in our universities, bringing people together, talent pools. Can we work on something? Can we test it? Can we implement it? Okay. And it's also important to think of, when we're looking at security in Malawi aspect, building a resilient system. We need local experts. So people who are trained, who know how to protect the computers and data. Also, then we're looking at strong security tools. We can look at programs where students are developing their skills, their security, their programming, developing small tools, security tools that can be implemented to safeguard our networks and systems. We're also training people about security and supporting companies, especially the startups. So if there are startups that are looking at implementing security softwares, let's promote them, let's support them, because at the end of the day, we want to create a safe digital environment so we can handle cyber crimes when they happen. This one, I've mentioned most of it, isn't it? I've mentioned about partnership. I've mentioned that adopting security policies early. So for small businesses on a budget, you can use free and open source tools to secure yourself. So you can leverage tools like Bitdefender and Avast and there are also some open source solutions that can be implemented. And there is also, when you subscribe to specific clouds like Google Workspace, Microsoft 365, it sort of helps to store your data securely. So you're not thinking about, you might need to think about it, but now you're transferring the risk to the cloud service provider, so that you know that your data is secured. Also ensuring that people are using strong passwords, and then you have the multi-factor authentication to help, just in case someone wants to knows your password, they will not have your phone or whatever you're using to prove that it is actually you. And also employee training is important, as I mentioned earlier on. If you don't train your employers, you're prone to threats, cyber threats, because they are the weakest link. And regular software updates, I would say that's very important to ensure that your system is safeguarded against known vulnerabilities. If you are a victim of a cyber attack, what to do? I do hope that in the near future, maybe we would have a clear office or organization that is actually recording these cyber crimes and handling them. But if you think your machine is attacked, disconnect from the internet if you can, or affected devices, disconnect them from the internet, switch them off, plug them off for a while, and then if you disconnect from the internet, it will actually give you an opportunity to investigate what actually is happening later on. Report to authorities. Okay, report to the authorities. As I mentioned earlier on, that it seems that the Malawi police is the one that's handling these issues as of now. So if you can report to them and see how they can help you. If the attack is on, for example, your mobile phone, your bank app, or Airtel Money, you need to report to the financial institutions that something is happening, or my bank account details have been compromised. And then you need to document an attack. This would be more for businesses or public sector. So if an attack has happened, you need to keep a record of it. What happened? What suspicious activities had happened before that? So did someone click an email link, or was there a message that someone opened that actually led to this attack happening? It will help you when you're investigating, or when you're trying to implement measures to prevent the attack from happening again in the near future. If you can't do all of this, then you can seek for professional help to someone who is a security expert or an IT person, an IT specialist. If you can't recover your data, the data recovery tools that might be used to recover your data, for example, if you've been attacked by a ransomware. Now, Phyllis, you asked me something about AI in cyber attacks. So I split that into two to say, okay, if we look at AI in cyber attacks, and then we look at it in defense as well, because AI is here to stay and can be used for good as well. So you see that because of AI, attacks have become very sophisticated, so much that you will get an email that's very convincing. There are no grammatical errors. It's very convincing for you, and you would end up clicking on those links. So it's helping criminals to generate messages that can, that can appeal to the to people, and then trick individuals into giving away personal information, thinking, oh, this message is actually from National Bank, and then you click on that link. And then one other thing that attackers are doing is to use AI to scan systems for vulnerabilities. So AI is advanced. It's been fed this information, vulnerabilities that are there in specific systems. So they're using AI to find out if you have outdated software on your network, if maybe you have misconfigured servers, you still are using admin account and admin password on your on your systems and your servers, and then that gives them like an attacking platform. They can exploit these gaps and then attack you faster than before. Those are the two ways that I thought of in terms of attacks. Now let's look at defense side. So in defending, we can look at implementing real-time threat detection. So we know the threats that are there, and AI can play a crucial role in detecting these threats before they happen or as they happen. That would help to respond to them quicker. So if you're monitoring, for example, unusual behaviors on your network, and you see that someone is trying to log in 10, 20 times, 30 times, before they even get to 10 times, you should be able to detect it and think, okay, someone is trying to attack our system. And AI can also help to predict and prevent attacks. So if you use models to look at past cyber incidents, and then you can use that data, and it can tell you future attacks, predict future attacks, to say, okay, maybe these are the vulnerabilities that are in these systems, and these are systems that are more prone to be attacked. My key takeaways from all this is to see a Malawi that is actually safe as we're transitioning to digital systems and using various tools and softwares. It's important for us to make sure that security is embedded right in there. And we also need to focus on local capacity building. So training people in cybersecurity so that we are able to respond to threats that are happening. And also something just to think about, that maybe if there are local startups, see universities that are developing cybersecurity solutions tailored for local Malawi, maybe then the government and the private sector as well should be supporting these initiatives to uplift them, uh, give them business, let them install them, test them, and support them, because we cannot just be consuming solutions from outside. We need to look at developing our own solutions, in-house solutions for Malawi. And that's it. Thank you. I'm happy to get questions or comments.
Okay, thank you so much, Florence. This has been very, very good, very insightful, as a couple of people have said, even in the comments. And I always like to say, like, one of the purposes of my webinar series is actually to build up people, like, give people confidence to not just always be consumers, but we also have to learn to create our own solutions, create solutions that can even cross borders, not only for Malawi, but create solutions that can be provided to even the whole continent. So
Yes.
I love your key takeaway. We need to build our own capacity, create solutions that work for Malawian problems. So we are kind of short on time, so I'm gonna go through this quickly because we have a couple of questions. Um, so Mr. Murphy Kajumi asked, he said, this is an engaging presentation. Are there any insights on national capacity to deal with cybersecurity? So I guess that's one of the things that you're addressing, saying I mean, you have talked about the Cybersecurity Act and everything. I'm just going to go through this quickly to kind of, yeah, because of the time. So Mr. Mervin Kapiji also said, I think skilled people are there, but well, we all know the propaganda that happens in this country when it comes to recruiting local talent.
Oh, sorry, that's
Well,
something I also wanted to tackle on. Sometimes we have
mm,
the skills, people learn the skills, but I think we don't have the capacity to retain the skills. And because there is a high demand of cybersecurity skills across the globe, people easily
yeah,
migrate to those countries. That's
other
very true,
countries,
yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Mr. Ruben Lungu said we need to teach cybersecurity to the disabled. We need to provide audiobooks to the blind as a teaching material. And then Frank Kalunga said, is there need to establish a cybercrime department within the police, something similar to fiscal police, or does this already exist? And I think that was addressed in the comments by Patrick Mugala, who said To my understanding, it does exist and it is called the Malawi Police Cybercrime Division, and it
Yeah.
has been very busy with arrests lately. And then and then Sibusiso Kajumi said, very insightful. Do you think implementing an active national threat hunting team would be key to help mitigate these risks that we face as a country? You can address that one, Florence.
Yeah, I think that that would be key because, as I mentioned earlier on, the threats that we face as a developing country is not the same as the threats that are faced in developing countries, and we need to know which are the threats that are more prominent to us as Malawians, and how do we address this. I think that's a good idea, but maybe that could be more focused um, by the Malawi set team. Maybe the Malawi set team could have like maybe a functionality where they are actually uh, identifying these threats and then categorizing them and then sharing this information to the public, and yeah, that would really help.
Okay, so Frank Kalonga said regular software updates is a very important issue that needs to be addressed, especially in government departments that operate on limited budgets. Technology updates are usually overlooked. I think this is interesting because the guest I had last week, as I was saying, we were talking about digital public goods. And one of the key issues that he likes to address is vendor lock in, that most of the government systems that we have are proprietary software. So we buy these things and then we are kind of limited because we don't have access to some of these open source solutions. So I
Mm.
don't know what you think on that, Florence, and how you can come in on that one.
I think vendor lock-in is a thing. Most of the businesses that will come, they want to stay because they want to keep earning money from the government. And this is
Yeah.
where we're looking at i- implementing local solutions. I am sure we have capacity in the universities and people that have graduated that can develop solutions, local solutions that can be easily implemented. But maybe the issue is making sure that these solutions are tested, and uh, they are tested and they have the security in them so that people are confident in those tools. I think the issue is for us to be confident in our own software solutions. That's something that we need to look at to avoid the vendor lock-in. Yeah.
Okay, and the final this is the final comment. It says, and something has to be done about these mobile banking systems in the country. They're very susceptible to being hacked, and I have no idea why.
Hmm. I think the um, mobile banking system, people have sort of looked at the vulnerabilities. I think that's where the team would come in handy to say, research and look more into it to say what is actually causing the vulnerabilities. Why is it so easy to hack, gain access and transfer people's money in mobile systems? I think that's something that's worth researching on. I am like you, Aubrey. I'm not sure why that's the case, but we can see that there is probably vulnerabilities that are being exploited, and these need to be identified, and then we need to make sure we find ways of addressing them.
All right, thank you so much. And the one thing that you said that I really loved was people are the weakest link when it comes to cybersecurity. There's a lot of things that we do, even in our offices. You write down your password on a paper, you leave it somewhere, you take a picture, you post on Instagram. You don't know what people are seeing from your office and how maybe they have malicious intent. And some people do these things innocently, or some people do actually have bad motives.
Mhm.
So, yeah, there's a lot that we've talked about, but because of time, unfortunately, we can go on. But from the comments, this has been a great session. I've enjoyed it and I've learned a lot. If anyone wants to know more about what Florence is doing, she's on LinkedIn, Florence Love Nkosi. You can connect, follow with her on LinkedIn. Yeah, so thank you so much, Florence, for doing this session. And until next time, good evening.
Thank you for having me. Until next
Yeah.
time. Bye bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.